Hello, welcome. So in this video I want to give some tips and ideas that either I have already been using or that I also am going to implement this season for dealing with the time change in fall. So of course when fall rolls around it starts getting dark earlier, and then especially once the time change hits, which was like one or two, I think only 1 week ago right now, it's kind of like a really big shift from summer. And like for me living in California, of course it's not that drastic, but it's a big shift from summer where it was getting dark at like 8 p.m, 8:30 p.m, and now in fall time it gets dark at like at 4:30 or 5 p.m. And of course it was a gradual transition, but it's still pretty hard to deal with that lack of sunlight. It can be really depressing, and people can get, like seasonal affective disorder. And even if it's not to that extent, it's just it could just be really tough on your mental and emotional state, especially right now when we still have COVID and quarantine restrictions, so we can't necessarily cope with it in the same ways that we might under normal circumstances. So yeah, I just wanted to share some ideas that I had for coping with the time change in order to help boost your mood. Yeah, and these are just some small tips, and some might be more realistic for some than others and may not apply to everybody, but I just hope that there is at least one tip that you can use to help you during the season. Okay, so my first tip is gonna sound kind of obvious, but it's just to wake up earlier. So for me, the sun starts getting up around 6 or 6:30, so I usually wake up around 7, and I'm still working on waking up earlier, but I definitely think that shifting your waking time to match when the sun rises so that you do get the chance to be in sync with the sun and make more out of your day during the daylight hours is a really good idea. And of course, I know it can be difficult depending on the weather that you live in to like feel the motivation to wake up, because it is getting colder, and I definitely feel that sometimes, even though like I said, I know that like where I live in California, is not really that cold. It's not cold, but for me, when the season changes and the weather does get colder, I do have some difficulty wanting to get out of bed because I'm not used to the coldness. But I find that when I do wake up earlier and I get my day started earlier, once the sun is out, I have a better day. Yeah, so I would probably just start by setting your, if you use an alarm, setting your alarm 10 to 15 minutes earlier, and then gradually bringing back your waking time until you do end up having your waking time align with the sunrise. And I do want to say that the first few tips that I am sharing are more about getting that sun exposure and daylight outside time, but not all of the tips are going to be like that. So okay, so my second tip is if possible for you to take your, if you're working, to take your lunch and any breaks you have outdoors. When you take your lunch and when you take any breaks, even if you're not working from home, if you work somewhere where once you're on break you can leave the building or you can leave your work site for just a few minutes, 10 to 30 minutes, maybe even an hour. If you have an hour lunch, that's really great, but I think even just at least 10 or 15 minutes to just walk away from your work and spend that outside is going to be really beneficial, and something that your mind and body also appreciate. And when I do work at my actual work location, my lunchtime, I like to spend it usually at a park, and I eat my lunch outside, or I take a walk at the park and I like listen to a podcast, or just don't listen to anything and just spend the time in a park in nature. That's really, really nice, because my work is just, I'm just like in a room and it's a dark room, and particularly usually I end up being in a room that has no windows, which I think a lot of people can relate to. So it's just like sometimes I don't even realize how badly I needed to be outdoors once, and not until like I am on my lunch and I'm outside. And even when I'm working from home and say like I am working by a window, I still like to try to take my lunch out of my home and go to a park near my home or take a walk somewhere else, because the monotony of being in the same room or a few rooms, it's just depressing. So taking the time to take your lunch outside is really nice. So for me, I'm majority working from home, and I do have a few days that I do have to work from my work location, which is still in a building. And when I do work from home, I have more flexibility over my location within my home or at a family member's home. So when I work at like my family member's home, because I live in an apartment and I don't really have an outdoor space, when I work at my family member's home, I like to spend any time that I'm able to working outside. Now, this isn't always possible because of outside brings many noises, and that can be an issue if you're in meetings or you're just trying to do something and focus and the environment is not really lending itself to you working. Just kind of bear that in mind and work with what you can. You know your job best and what is possible and what isn't. But like if you're just doing computer work and there is a space that you have outdoors where you can set up a little desk and just spend like at least an hour outside working, I think that that's a really great opportunity to spend time outside and get that sunshine on you if it is out. Even if the sun's not out and the weather is decent enough, or you can cope with whatever the weather is like outside, and you're able to spend some time working outside, I think even just that is good for your body and your mental state. Okay, so my next tip is for when you're not working, when you have your time off, your weekends, whatever days off or hours off that you do have, to, you know, try to plan activities that are outdoor activities. Yeah, this will vary by your location and what the weather is like, but I mean, if you're already living in those conditions, you're probably already prepared for that. So, and you're used to it. So I think either way, it's really good to, like I said, plan outdoor activities. If you can, plan them with the people that you live with. If you do live with others, like family, spouses, roommates, just plan like an outdoor picnic with the people that you're with, or something that you can do outside, like plan a bike ride, any outdoor activities like hiking, basically probably a lot of sports. And even if you're not a sporty person or like athletic, I think this is still good, because that's not really the point of the activity. The point is just to spend time outside and have fun with whoever you're able to do this with. Or even if you don't have anybody, plan something with yourself. Like I said, if you have a bike, you can plan a bike ride, you can do hiking, you can take a walk, you can just spend a day at the park by yourself. Or if you have a pet, that's really nice. They're like a good motivator and excuse to take you outside. But yeah, even if it's just you, think of or look up activities either that you already like or that you've always wanted to try, or that are very common in your area and easy to do, that are outdoor activities. And your options may be limited right now because of COVID, but I do think that there are probably, hopefully, some outdoor areas near you that you are able to go and socially distance and, you know, wear a mask and participate in something either in a small group that you've been with, or like I said, by yourself. I just think that this is a good idea because you're maximizing the time off that you do have to take advantage of the daylight hours. And then if you do plan something like physical and you spend all day outside, usually I find, at least for me, because I work inside like an office setting, so when I do have like a whole activity day outside in the daytime, it gets me pretty tired. So when I am home at night in the dark, I'm not really like upset about it, I'm just like relaxing. So on to my next tip. My next tip is it's related to, I mean, they're all related, but it kind of has to do with the same idea as my previous tip, which is outdoor activities, or just being outside. If you have an outside area like a backyard or a porch or something, to just still be outside at nighttime, even if the sun is not out. I don't know if other people feel this way, but for me, I don't know why I have this mentality. Sometimes I get into this mentality that, oh, it's dark outside, I can't go outside and I can't do anything, I just have to be home. But that's not true. If you're being safe and you're socially distancing right now, and like I said, even if you have your own yard or something, that's great. But you can still go outside and you can do things. You can take an evening walk by yourself or with your family or roommate, or like depending on what maybe like sports you do, you can go to like an empty parking lot that has lighting and just hang out there. That sounds kind of sketchy, but you know, just be aware of your surroundings and probably go with, not just be alone in that situation. But you can still do things outside at night even if it's dark. Just make sure that you're being safe about it. And I think, at least for me, like even if it's dark, if I'm outside, it's still a benefit to my physical and mental health for me to be outside and get fresh air and not be under a roof. Even if like you have the tiniest outdoor space, I think you should still find a way to use it. Like say you don't want to go somewhere, you don't want to walk or drive somewhere at night for whatever reason, like I can understand that. I don't really like driving at night. I have a tiny little like porch on my apartment, and sometimes I don't always feel comfortable being out there just because people walk by a lot, but they don't really bother me. So sometimes even when it's dark, I will like go out there, and even if I'm still just on my phone, I'm not on my phone in my room or in my living room, just like in what can feel like a box. Sometimes I'm getting a little bit of fresh air and a change of scenery and like feeling the wind, seeing the sky, even if it's like the night sky. And where I live, I don't get to see any stars, but it still has an impact on me compared to if I'm literally just inside the whole time. So my next couple of tips I can kind of link them together. So this actually has to do with being indoors. So plan a lot of indoor activities. I think that there are probably a lot of lists out there and other videos back from when quarantine started talking about indoor activities and different things you can do inside that you can refer to right now that the time is changing and it's getting dark earlier and you may not always be able to be outside. But yeah, plan a lot of different indoor activities that maybe you didn't really have a reason to do before. Yeah, and just kind of like embrace the season and embrace the darkness and take advantage of like the cozy mood that this season gives. So, you know, different things include like reading, knitting or crocheting, drawing. Even if you don't like draw or you don't consider yourself artistic, just something creative that can be done indoors. And I think especially different like self-care activities that are indoors can be really nice. So giving yourself a self massage and taking nighttime baths, you know, like getting a couple of candles and really making it like a nice environment and like a self-care night, like I said. Just like capitalizing on like the mood and using it to your advantage to wind down and embrace the time to relax and not be always doing something. And definitely watching shows, watching movies, binging Netflix and stuff. You don't need to feel guilty about doing those things. If those help you get through the season, then that's great, you know. I mean, I even do that even during summertime. But yeah, just actually make a plan to do it and just don't let yourself feel guilty about it. Just indulge in, like I said, the season and the mood. So with that, movies and stuff, I would say this is like a sub tip, make a list of TV shows and movies that you have been really wanting to watch or that you've been hearing about, and just plan when you're gonna watch those and binge those. I don't know about other people, but I feel like for me, I have a lot of movies and shows that have been on my list for a long time, but I haven't really like had the time to watch them. But sometimes right now I have been finding myself being home at night and it's like barely 6 o'clock and I feel like depressed. So I think that would be a good opportunity for me to be like, okay, like I don't need to feel sad. I mean, you know, if I feel sad, I can let myself feel sad, but one thing to like not go deeper into that sadness that I can do is just like let myself be in that moment and say, okay, I'm gonna take this opportunity to watch this movie that I've been really wanting to watch, or start watching this series that I've been really wanting to watch, or that I've been hearing people talk about, and I'm just gonna embrace the moment. Okay, and then my next tip is also building on the previous two tips, which is within the theme of like embracing the season and embracing the moment, and embracing like self-care during this season in a different way. I mean, I always like to do self-care, but I just kind of change it up depending on the time and what's going on, and in this case depending on the season. So for this season, one way to practice self-care in a way that really helps you get through the darkness, for me at least, is to embrace the season in terms of what I cook and different treats that I get and make for myself. So instead of like letting myself always feel down, one thing that I'm going to do is plan ahead of different recipes that I really want to try that are really season appropriate, different snacks that I want to try, like baking. I like baking. Different drinks that I want to get. I recently received a mug that I ordered that I'm like really happy about, and you know, that's just gonna make my warm nighttime drinks so much more special, and it's gonna bring me joy. And you know, I'm not saying like you have to go and buy something, but just find whatever ways you can to add comfort and enjoyment to this time, whether it be small things like trying a new kind of tea, or something bigger like trying new recipes. Yeah, so basically, again, just like kind of embracing the season and figuring out ways that you can enhance it instead of try to resist it. Okay, so I'm almost done. So my last two tips are, these are also like related to each other, but they have to do with planning and scheduling. So in the beginning of the time change, well, it's only been like a week, but I have been finding myself kind of being, and this has happened in previous years, where, you know, I have a plan for how my day or week is gonna go, but when I'm visualizing it, it's like there's some things that I only feel good doing during the day, or there's chores that I was gonna do, and then I realized that if I do them, or the day happened and I did things the way I planned, but I realized that I feel upset because I didn't get to spend the time outside that I wanted to spend. Like maybe I only had an hour of free time, and I spent that hour of free time doing laundry inside, and I still hadn't worked out for the day, and I wanted to work out outside and enjoy the sunlight that I had. But I realized that I messed up with how I scheduled, and I missed the opportunity, and I feel really upset. So this year I'm trying to learn from my previous mistakes and remember that experience that I have had many times, where I realized that I spent my free time, when it was perfectly nice outside, doing things indoors that could easily have been rescheduled to the nighttime. So basically, just plan ahead as much as you can and schedule things that need to be done inside anyway, for time that is not gonna be a time that you regret not being able to spend outside. Because usually I have a few days of the week where like I spend a lot of hours cooking, so I'm trying to do that later in the evening when I don't feel like I'm missing out, or just like other chores and stuff. And this goes for weekday, weekend, when you're working and not working, and of course like it'll apply to you differently depending on your life situation, but as much as you can, try to schedule things to be able to take advantage of the daylight hours. So those are all of my tips and ideas that I had for going into this fall and winter season, in order to help alleviate as much of the emotional, mental toll that the time change and these winter, fall months and seasons can take on me, at least, and I know that a lot of other people can feel the same way. So yeah, I think it's good to go in it with some tools that you can use to cope and combat, or at least just make it a little easier on yourself. So these are some of the things that I'm going to be trying this year. I'm still going to be looking for more ideas, and if you have any ideas, please share them, but hopefully these tips helped out. Yeah, so thank you so much for watching. Bye.